Millionaire fired 101 nannies in 6 months, but one black maid did the impossible with his 6 daughters. The Harrison estate stood tall, shining with wealth but drowning in chaos. Inside lived billionaire Richard Harrison and his 6 young daughters, each more stubborn and wild than the other. Since their mother's death, the mansion had become a battlefield of broken rules and endless tantrums. The girls had driven away every nanny who dared to step foot inside. Some left crying, others ran away before the week ended. Richard had fired 101 nannies in 6 months, his patience gone, his hope lost. He told his assistant coldly, "No one can handle my daughters." Yet that morning, something different happened. Through the towering gates came a woman who didn't look like she belonged among chandeliers and marble floors. Her name was Angela Brooks, a black maid with calm eyes and a quiet grace. She wasn't dressed in designer clothes or holding degrees like the other nannies. She came for a job she desperately needed, not knowing she was walking into a house full of emotional wreckage. When she entered, the girls tested her right away. The youngest spilled orange juice across the white carpet and shouted, "Clean that up, maid." The others laughed, expecting her to yell or quit like all the rest. But Angela didn't raise her voice. She simply knelt beside the child, took her hand gently, and said, "We clean our mess together." The laughter stopped. The girls were confused. No one had ever spoken to them with patience. Throughout the day, Angela continued working quietly, turning chores into little games and singing softly as she cleaned. Her calmness was unsettling for the children who were used to chaos. Days passed, and the atmosphere began to shift. Mealtimes became calmer, and laughter started returning to the dining room. Angela cooked homemade food and encouraged the girls to help, teaching them the joy of small responsibilities. She listened to their stories without judgment and reminded them that kindness was strength, not weakness. One evening, Richard came home early and stopped outside the kitchen. He saw his daughters covered in flour, laughing as Angela taught them to bake cookies. He hadn't heard that kind of laughter in years. It stirred something inside him, a memory of his late wife, the warmth that had vanished from their lives. Angela never tried to impress Richard. Her focus was on the girls. She disciplined them with empathy, not fear. Slowly, they began to trust her, sharing their pain and loneliness. The eldest confessed she missed her mother's bedtime stories. The youngest admitted she still cried at night. Angela hugged them, whispering that love doesn't disappear. It changes form and lives through how we treat one another. In just a few weeks, the woman everyone dismissed as just a maid did what no one else could. She restored peace in a house money couldn't save. Richard realized that true power wasn't in wealth, but in compassion. The impossible had happened. The wild daughters had found their hearts again, all because one humble woman chose to love them when no one else would. From the very first hour inside the Harrison mansion, Angela Brooks understood why every nanny before her had failed. The 6 daughters of billionaire Richard Harrison were wild, sharp-tongued, and completely out of control. They tested her patience from the moment she stepped inside the marble halls. One of the girls threw food at her, another mocked her voice, and the youngest poured orange juice across the white carpet, shouting with a cruel smile, "Clean that up, maid." It was a moment that had broken every woman before her. But Angela didn't shout, didn't cry, and didn't flinch. She knelt down, looked the child gently in the eyes, and said in a calm voice, "We clean our mess together." The girls froze. For the first time, someone didn't yell, threaten, or run away. There was something powerful in Angela's calmness, something none of them had ever felt before. Throughout the day, the girls continued to push her, breaking toys and slamming doors, waiting for her to explode. But Angela never did. Instead, she began to introduce small changes. She turned cleaning into games, asking who could fold clothes the fastest. She played soft music while cooking, teaching them to measure ingredients and taste their food with pride. At bedtime, instead of shouting at them to sleep, she told stories, real ones, about people who learned to be kind even when life was unfair. Slowly, the mansion began to sound different. The echoes of screaming and crying were replaced with quiet laughter, the kind that had been missing for years. Richard, who had long given up on finding peace in his home, began to notice the change. One evening, as he walked past the living room, he stopped in disbelief. His daughters, once wild and disobedient, were sitting together on the rug, listening intently as Angela read them a story. There were no arguments, no shouting, only peace. He didn't interrupt. For the first time in months, he smiled. But Angela knew this wasn't about discipline or control. These girls weren't bad, they were broken. They missed their mother, they felt invisible to their father, and they had used rebellion as a cry for love. Angela understood pain because she had lived it too. She carried her own scars, though she never spoke of them. Every day, she chose patience over punishment, love over anger. She didn't see spoiled brats. She saw 6 little hearts desperate for warmth. Days turned into weeks, and the change was undeniable. The girls began helping her without being asked. They cleaned their rooms, said please and thank you, and even comforted each other when things went wrong. Angela had done what seemed impossible. She healed through kindness. In her presence, the mansion transformed from a place of chaos into a home filled with love and laughter. For Richard Harrison, it was the first time he realized that the greatest strength in the world doesn't come from power or wealth. It comes from patience, compassion, and the courage to stay calm when everyone else gives up. Weeks went by, and something in the Harrison mansion began to shift quietly, almost like a whisper turning into a song. Angela Brooks had started as a maid, but now she was something far deeper. She was the heart of the home, the warmth the children didn't know they needed. Each of the 6 daughters slowly began to open up to her, their rough edges softening with every passing day. The eldest, who once spoke with defiance, began helping Angela in the kitchen, chopping vegetables and listening to her calm voice. One afternoon, while stirring a pot of soup, she whispered, "He never sees me, you know. Dad never notices when I'm trying." Angela looked at her with gentle eyes and said, "Sometimes love hides behind silence, child. You just have to remind it to speak." It was the first time anyone had spoken to the girl with kindness instead of frustration. The younger daughters, once loud and destructive, started following Angela like little shadows. She taught them how to fold laundry, water the plants, and write letters to their late mother, letters they would place under her old favorite tree in the garden. Through these small rituals, Angela helped them grieve without words. The girls began to smile again, laugh again, live again. Even the walls of the mansion seemed softer now, filled with music, the scent of home-cooked meals, and gentle laughter echoing through once empty halls. Richard Harrison noticed these changes from a distance. He began coming home earlier than usual, standing in the doorway just to listen. He watched his daughters reading around the fireplace while Angela quietly mended a dress nearby. He didn't understand how she had done it. She never raised her voice, never demanded obedience, and yet his daughters respected her more than anyone else. For the first time since his wife's death, Richard felt peace returning to the house. But with peace came fear, the fear of losing it all again. One evening, as Richard walked into the kitchen, he froze at the sight of a drawing taped to the refrigerator. It was a crayon sketch of all 6 girls holding Angela's hand. Above them were the words written in uneven, childlike letters. "Our real family." His throat tightened. He realized he hadn't been drawn in their pictures for months. Angela had given them something money never could: healing. That night, he couldn't sleep. He walked through the quiet mansion, hearing the faint giggles of his daughters down the hall, and for the first time, he understood that love was not something he could buy or command. It had to be earned with care, with patience, with the kind of humility Angela carried effortlessly. In that stillness, Richard knew the truth. Angela Brooks had not just mended his daughters, she had rebuilt his family. And in doing so, she had mended something inside him too, something he didn't know was broken. The impossible had finally been done, not by power or wealth, but by the quiet grace of one woman's heart. 3 months had passed since Angela Brooks first stepped into the grand Harrison mansion, and the change inside those walls was nothing short of a miracle. The same home that once echoed with anger, shouting, and broken laughter was now filled with music, warmth, and love. The 6 daughters who had once been wild and rebellious now woke up early, helped each other with chores, and even waited for their father to join them for breakfast. The eldest helped the younger ones dress, the middle girls read stories to each other, and the youngest, once the loudest, now painted pictures for Angela every morning. The transformation was quiet but powerful, the kind that only love could bring. Richard Harrison, the man who once believed money could fix everything, watched in awe as his daughters bloomed under the care of the woman he had nearly overlooked. Angela had done the impossible without shouting, without punishment, and without ever trying to prove her worth. She led by example through gentleness and strength. When the girls argued, she taught them to listen. When they cried, she reminded them that feelings weren't weaknesses. When they succeeded, she made sure they understood gratitude. She gave them lessons their schools never could. Lessons about compassion, kindness, and faith. The staff whispered about her quietly, saying she was different, that she carried light wherever she went. Even the gardens outside seemed brighter since she had arrived. One evening, Richard decided to do something he hadn't done in years. He gathered his staff and daughters for dinner. The long dining table, once a place of silence and tension, was alive with laughter. The girls helped serve food, smiling proudly as Angela guided them. Richard stood and raised his glass. His voice trembled slightly as he looked at the woman who had changed everything. "Angela," he said softly, "you did what 101 professionals couldn't. You gave my girls their hearts back." The room went silent. Angela's eyes lowered with humility. She didn't seek praise. She only smiled and said, "I didn't fix them, sir. They fixed themselves when someone finally believed in them." Her words hung in the air like a gentle truth that touched everyone's heart. Richard felt his throat tighten as he looked at his daughters. Laughing, happy, whole. For the first time in years, he saw his late wife in their smiles. He realized that love was never about perfection, status, or control. It was about patience, forgiveness, and faith. As the night went on, the girls ran to Angela and hugged her tightly, tears of joy in their eyes. In that embrace, Richard saw what he had been missing all along. The woman everyone once called just a maid had brought back something no wealth could buy: the soul of his family. From that night onward, Angela was no longer an employee. She was family, the heart that finally made the mansion feel like home.